You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the
over 3 million. Actually, if you go out to the YouTube video, it's over 5 million now. And obviously, this is what it looks like when you're viewing on the screen, and you can move around. And like many good VR videos, their point of view is essentially where your main interests are, but you can move around. In fact, I would say watch it a couple of times and you can see that there are other things going on in the video. It's pretty cool from that perspective. But again, this is the most watched video in 48 hours, or I'm sorry, 360 video, surpassing a Russian band video, which had 1.3 million. But, you know, there was another one that we talked about on the show done by kind of a rendition of a bunch of Queen songs, if you remember, that we talked about. Plus, there's the one from U2 and a few others that I think also have been very successful. But the fact is that this was only released on YouTube, probably is why it garnered the award for the most downloaded in a 48-hour period. So if you haven't seen it, look at it. Again, sadly, it was not done with stereo projection. It's just mono. However, they do use force perspective really well, so it does give a good illusion that there's some depth to it. So Gorillaz, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Saturnz, Barz video is kind of interesting. Not much for their music, but they do seem to have some entertaining. Well, it looks like I was disrupted there for a moment. I apologize for that. Hopefully that won't happen again. All right, let's move on to our next item. So, as you know, one of the items that I was going to talk about today, and actually I have a little video that I'll show, so we can play that in the background. There is a product called MakeVR that was just released. In fact, what's interesting, this is, let me turn down the volume. This was one of the products that attracted me to Sixense and actually backing them on Kickstarter. If you remember, before there was such thing as the HTC Vive hand controllers or the touch controllers from Occipital, I'm sorry, not Occipital, Oculus, there was a company called Sixense who was coming out with the STEM system, which was a wireless version of their Hydra system that allowed you to use controllers in 3D space. Everybody, I mean, it was a very successful Kickstarter, over $500,000 secured from it. But the other thing that they showed off at this one show was this product called MakeVR. Now, it was very rough at the time, but the thing about the MakeVR video, or the demonstration, is that you could actually design while in space. And I thought that was very interesting, and the ability that they were using at that time, a prototype of the STEM system to do so, I thought was extremely cool. And as you can see on the website behind me, you could pretty much create some images or some 3D models while in the 3D space. So this was also launched on Kickstarter. As you can see behind me, they've actually launched 3 different things. The STEM system, as well as the MakeVR, the MakeVR, as you can see, was canceled. Supposedly they did refund, because it was canceled, those who had supported them. However, as you know, and I've covered it several times on the show, the STEM system itself has never seen the light of day. It's been almost 4 years now. And many people, including myself, have put a lot of money backing them. And I've actually had Amir, the CEO of the company, on several times to say, where is this product? And he's always promised us that it would be available. Now, what's interesting is if you go out to the STEM system and into the comments area, frankly, the only thing that people are now saying is the problems with getting a refund. And as many people who at this point just want their money back, as you remember in my own interview, they don't see it as such. They feel that you back them for their research. The sad thing is their research has not actually created a product yet. So many people are demanding refunds. There has been talk about a class action suit, which I personally have asked for myself. However, during the transition and moving and other things that I've been working on, as well as being sick, I did not move forward with it. The fact is that we're still in that situation today. Now that I live in the state of Oregon, I will look at pursuing that. So if anybody who's listening and would be interested in it, you can email me or comment on the YouTube video that you would like to be a part of it. I'm going to try and create a petition and move forward with this. It is ridiculous that we have a company out there who's exploited the people on Kickstarters, and for to the tune of like $600,000. Then on top of that, already pushed forward with pre-orders with close to about the same amount or even more, and then at the same time continue to be going to expos and presentations what was the last one there? The Silicon Valley VR Expo, which I think was just last week. Prior to that, they went to GDC, that I know personally is not cheap. Yet they continue to somehow make it to these shows to demonstrate prototypes. And then some person had made the comment that in their demonstration at the Silicon Valley VR Expo, that they only had essentially a plastic outer container, which I guess they've gotten some preliminary production parts in order to create that. But they kind of identified that there were no electronics. It was just essentially a housing. And some people are wondering, okay, now that we have a housing, do we actually have the electronics? But again, many of us have kind of just thrown up our hands and just felt like this has all been a loss. The fact is that we keep seeing their name and that they just didn't die, like many companies who, move into Kickstarter, find themselves in financial trouble, and then they just go away. For whatever reason, this company continues to be in the limelight, which I think is like a thorn in your side. It just keeps bothering you and it doesn't go away. It just keeps reminding you how, as I call it, April Foolish I was, as many of our Kickstarter backers were, to even think about funding this company. So let's go back to Make VR. It's a cool little product. I personally was I thought about reviewing it, actually taking a look at it, but once I went out to the HTC Vive, because it is only available on the HTC Vive site, it's not available through Oculus or the Steam store. They want $19.95 for it. Now, my point is, they have money from myself and many before. You would think, in order to kind of throw an olive branch out there, that they would have provided something like this. In fact, if I remember correctly, I never even got my t-shirt from them. So I don't know if anybody else has, but they haven't even gone as far as providing you the small little reward that you get just for backing them. That didn't even come about. So I'm still hoping to get my t-shirt. Well, I don't think I'd ever wear it, so forget about it. But I would think that they would give a free copy of this. That would make sense. And it's also interesting that they show a competitor's hand controllers being used with it. So very interesting. Now, some of the reviews, and I don't know if there's two. One person feels that it's only worth 1 star. It's useless without the jig kit for aligning things. So again, it appears to be somewhat of a demo. Another person gave it 4 stars, saying that, it's a cool product. Hopefully more changes will come to it. But that seems to be the problem with Sixense. It always appears that they're kind of in a prototype beta stage, and you can't rate or award a product a good rating on its possibilities. I mean, if it doesn't work properly, then it should be reviewed as such. So as mentioned, I don't plan to spend the $19.95. If you have it and want to provide some comments in the YouTube comment area, let me know about it, or email me or tweet me at all things 3D pod, and let me know what you think about it, because I'm not going to spend my money when they have so much of my money already. So that's my point on it. Again, it's kind of like a mixed bag. I think it's going to be a cool product. I actually talked to the original developer for it, gosh, back in 2013. Thought again it was going to be a cool product. And again, because of the STEM system, but now that the STEM system, who knows where it's at, there are other controllers available, and it would be very interesting to see how it would work out. So if you're listening out there, Sixense, and you want to send me a free copy, I will take it and I will review it. Other than that, I will not spend any more money with you. Okay, let's move on to a couple of other updates, which are more positive. You know, there are other companies on Kickstarter that have actually done a good job of, let's see if we got it right here. One of them being Ono, who not only created a product, but have given 5 versions of it out to 5 lucky people. So they have continued to move forward. They were at the Luxury Technology Show in New York. I guess there are 4 of them there. And then obviously a couple people here who have them in hand. Now, if you remember, the Ono was the product that would use your smartphone. And essentially, let's see, we do have a little video. Did I put one in here? They have a little video here that we'll show. So I think this is kind of cool. So essentially, you bring up the app, and that looks like an Android app. You pour in, and this is where they have the patents. Remember, we've talked about this on the show before, that because the polymer that you use, let's say with the Form Labs or other UV SLA type printers, requires a fairly obviously high wavelength, but high powered laser or light burst from a white light source in order to harden the layers. It was interesting to see that they created something like that there. Now, the fact is that it's specific to a smartphone, and they're obviously doing this in visible light for us to see is kind of intriguing. Um, but there you go. But keep in mind, they're creating a lattice structure, and there are reasons for that. I mean, I guess there's some other samples you can look at, but it was like $99, if I remember correctly. It was extremely successful. So again, it's great to see that a product like this is actually coming to light. And then obviously there are a couple that I backed, as well as Chris, the co-host. One of them is being the bevel. In fact, I was just emailed right before the show that I should have it Monday or Tuesday. So we're actually going to review it next week and actually do a little fun skit on using it, because both Chris and I should have ours at that point. Now, if you remember, the bevel is a product that connects to your phone, and we can play this little video. But essentially, let me turn that down. But essentially, this product connects to your phone. Originally, it was for the iPhone, but I believe it's also for Android. Now, it's interesting, if you just heard what I said, connects to your iPhone. I guess if you noticed, it uses the 1/8 jack, which doesn't exist on an iPhone 7. So I don't know how it would work with it. I should ask him that. But obviously with Android or a previous phone, it should work just fine. But there it is. Essentially, it is a laser transmission camera system that allows you to scan a object and have a 3D image of it. And they have kind of touted it as the 3D camera for selfies. And so there you go. And some of the models we talked about earlier looked pretty good. Now, keep in mind, this is less than $100. In fact, if you were able to get it on Kickstarter, it was less than 50 bucks. And cute little thing you could throw in your pocket. And, you know, the models aren't the best, but I was surprised. And here's an example of the quality you can get from this low cost device. And there's another little model. So I'm pretty excited about that. Look forward to seeing it next week and talking more about it. I guess there is some calibration that needs to take place. So, and then they have had for some time models that you could download to see the quality. So again, I was pretty impressed with that. Again, the cool thing is, yes, it was late. There was expected delivery in January of 2016. Obviously, it is now 2017, but it is finally going to be available. They have a adjunct website repository that you can upload your models, kind of a Sketchfab, I wouldn't say competitor, but similar type device. So if you don't have one, I think you can pre-order them now. Let's see, I think it said that at the top of it. So you can pre-order it. And however, the price is now $89.99. And they also have their full bed 3D scanner, which I've also reviewed. Nice little unit. When it first came out, it seemed a little sluggish, but it's well made. It folds up, very compact package. So that's available as well. And then another product that both Chris and I backed is also very close to moving forward with it. They have all their parts. But the important thing behind all of these successful Kickstarter campaigns, including my friends out at Occipital and Oculus, is they may have been late to the game, but they followed through. And I think that's one of the reasons they're still successful today, obviously. Uh, Now, obviously, we've got some issues with, at least with Oculus and some of the things they have done, but frankly, they've come out with multiple products and, in my opinion, a really nice headset. So this product, let's see, we've got a little video here we can show, is another product that works in association with your iPhone and I believe also Android. Let's see, there was a new video that was out on their website. Let's see if they have an example. Here we go. We'll play this one. So essentially, the guy steps on it, then sets up the device, which is a cylinder with an arm to hold your phone. And then the cylinder has a green line scanner that scans it and is recorded by the phone's high resolution camera. And here he's setting it up, and then we'll see it. The item on the left there is nothing more than a 12-volt battery. How do I know this? Because I own one of those, and to provide power to the unit for remote purposes. So there's the green laser. So the purpose is to show that within 20 seconds, they're able to scan and process the data. And there's the 3D model. So that's pretty good. So you could actually, and obviously a person would have to hold their breath, but you could actually use this with an individual who's sitting there and get a high quality scan for a very reasonable price. Now, again, this item is now available for pre-order as well. So if you didn't get a chance to get it through the Kickstarter, it is available. That's in general. It took me here for $319. And then, as they say, estimated date is May 2017, and they're off to a good start to do that. Now, they also have a Bluetooth turntable so that you can rotate your object. Keep in mind, since it's just a line scanner, it only scans what's in front of it. To get a full scan of an object, you have to rotate the object either manually or through this Bluetooth turntable, and then the software will stitch it together. And some of the results are really, really stunning for such a inexpensive, but again, keep in mind, a lot of the processing and optics are also in the phone itself. So depending on your phone will also determine your quality and also the processing speed. So there's my updates from the past. So let's move into some of the items for the future. And I thought this was kind of interesting. This is from 3D's.org, the Stanley Black & Decker. So some of us, most of us, have some type of Black & Decker tools. Now we can supplement it with the new Stanley Model 1 3D printer. And for those of you who say, gosh, that looks familiar, sure enough, this actually appears to be, and I think I don't have, yeah, do I have the link? No, I don't have the link, but here's a link here. It appears to be in collaboration with Sindo, which is a Korean company who make a very similar model. Now, what I thought was interesting is that SolidWorks seems to be behind providing their name in order to provide this low-cost 3D printer for education in schools. You know, it doesn't look like anything fancy, but a solid printer, which I think should be done. A lot of people don't want to have to mess with their 3D printer. They just want to be able to fabricate items. It doesn't have a large bedside, but it looks very simple. Now, I did notice off to the right-hand side here, it appears to be a cartridge type system. So hopefully it's not one of these buy the low cost razor and then the blades themselves are much more expensive. If that is the case, then that could be a problem um, unless they have a cartridge system that can be refilled. But it appears that's where that's located. Now, there's comments that there are a few options, Wi-Fi, maybe even Bluetooth, as well as USB control. So there are many ways to be able to connect to this. I do not know the slicing software that comes with it. Let's see if it's mentioned in this article. Uh, the fact is that SolidWorks is involved with this. Maybe they are providing some software integration. Don't know at this time. I will look that up. It also doesn't identify any pricing unless it's buried in here, but I don't see any pricing there. Let's see if there is any pricing. Yeah, okay, so there is. So $1,325. I would not really call that very reasonable personally. I would assume that it would be a little less than that, especially for the build size. And the fact is there are a couple of other companies out there, easy to look up, that have products in this build size with this kind of quality for less than that. Um, I don't know what the attraction is to this, but if you think the Black & Decker name is important to you, you might want to look at it. Also keep in mind there are other products like the one from what was it, Home Depot? Didn't they also come out with a product now? So there's a few others that are out there. And as they show here, XYZ printing has had a few low-cost printers like the Nano that we've talked about in the past, which I'll click on here. Very compact, small unit for, as they show, $229. And then obviously a larger version for $449. The differences between this and the previous unit, this is PLA only. PLA only. The previous version is both PLA as well as ABS and maybe other materials as well. So I'm assuming, yes, as you can see there, it's a heated bed. So that might be a plus factor. Again, I don't know any more than that at this point. I'll keep that up to date, but another low cost printer from a well-known name. And the fact is that Dassault might be behind in the slicer software is intriguing. Don't know that, but I'm sorry. Yeah, Dassault, which makes SolidWorks, so that could be interesting. So again, we'll look into it. I'll have Chris maybe do a little more research since he's a SolidWorks user and see what the story is behind that. Okay, so let's move on immediately into our 3D in medicine. The reason that I'm bringing this up, and I have a PDF that I'll link to so that you can read it. It talks about some of the biomaterials. I met the guy who designed this at MedX in 2014. Likable guy, and it was very animated and obviously very enthusiastic about his product. Now, it looked very similar to this, and one of the benefits is, other than being a similar FDM type process, you put your biomaterials into these extruders, and obviously you can create bio printed objects, basically lattices and other things. And let's see if we can, here are your materials. Let's see if they'll bring up something. Does not seem to be working. So like I said, I do have a PDF. There is a material that's available. It is can't even, here we go. It's for tissue printing. There's a little kit there. But more importantly, if you're in a university, this is going to be a low-cost bioprinter that you can use for research and study. And I was very impressed with, let's see if we can bring up the shop now. I don't even know the price of it. So $10,000, I know that may seem expensive, but keep in mind, most of the stuff isn't even available for sale, let alone having a price. So $10,000 for a product that can provide biomaterials, I think is very interesting. And big plus, I'm hoping to have an interview with him in the next couple of weeks. They're actually going to be launching this next week, I believe, in his home state of Minnesota, if I remember correctly. I got an invite, but obviously, or either Minnesota or North or South Dakota, I can't remember. But invite for next week, Thursday or Friday. They're opening this to the world. As you can see, there is a price already set, so you can buy it if you want to. And very intriguing. I don't have $10,000 nor any reason. I don't know. Maybe I could have fixed my pinky. No, just kidding. But the fact is, if you're into research in a university, this seems like a no-brainer. And if you're obviously interested in something like that, take a look at it. All right, let's move on to our I'm going to skip, since we covered some scanners right now, and go directly into our VR corner. One of the big news items for the week was the Samsung's new Gear VR controller. I'm sorry, Gear VR and controller for $129. The cool thing is, at least in this article, is if you already have the previous Gear VR, you don't have to pay another $129. I do not know if the size is identical to the previous, since the newer Galaxy S8 as well as the S8 Plus are longer, but actually the actual physical side don't seem to be any larger than the previous phone. So it may fit into the same, what do you want to call it, cage or inset as the previous version. So the reason I mention that is the Samsung controller itself will be available separately for $39. I wish that Daydream would do something like that, since, as you know, I've been working on my own headset. They haven't even provided the technical information for OEMs to build it. So I think hats off to that. I don't know if there'll be any information to use it outside of the Gear VR system, but that's a start, and I would assume that some people would be hacking it. I know that I'll be buying one and taking a look at it. But from what I've heard, it's very comfortable to hold. I have not actually used one yet. I will pre-order it, and still debating if I'm going to go with the S8 or hold off until the Note 8, which supposedly, strong rumors, will have a 4K screen. But I'm pretty excited about the S8 and would not mind making that my new phone. I do have the Pixel XL, but still hang on to my Note 4. I actually use the note-taking part of that. So there you go. If you're interested in something like this, it'll be available. I know that Verizon has already sent me an email identifying that this will be available for free if you buy an S8 or S8 Plus. And so you can get one of these for free if you do so. So that might be a reason for me. But that will be available, and I think that that is a pretty cool update. The other thing, and I don't have it here, let's see if I can do a quick search is the Gear 360 has been updated as well. So here we go. Let's go to the Upload VR article. So there it is. Obviously, they have one in hand, and I've seen a couple of other reviews of it. I don't know if I'm a fan of the handle. I like the fact that it was a ball that had a tripod mount, because then you can create a custom tripod mount. This way, even though there's still a tripod mount on the bottom, provides a handle. And again, if it's an extension of a tripod, it wouldn't be a problem. And I don't know why they went in this direction, other than people might have complained that they ergonomically wasn't specifically made for doing 360s from your hand. The fact is that you have a record button. They've minimized the number of buttons. They've made it USB-C compatible now. One thing that was also mentioned, there is no replaceable battery. I don't know why they keep making these decisions. I did appreciate that in the previous version, because I could take batteries with me, and then once they had run out, I can continue, which has happened to me on occasion. They supposedly have improved the resolution from 3840 in 1920 to 4096 by 2040, which is kind of intriguing. It's not much of a jump, but it is a little bit. But again, that's only at 24 frames per second. I don't know if the previous version was at 3860 or at 24 frames per second. So as I indicate, you won't see that much of an improvement, a little bit. More importantly is what their codec is being used. They said that the original is supposed to be recorded as MP4 using the H.265, so this might give you much better quality. The other thing is that your connection to it is now using let's see, an LE version, but I thought that was the previous, so I don't. It says Bluetooth 4.1 and 802.11. So this is pretty much what I think the previous version had. And I found that that worked out okay. Other than that, I'm hoping that their codec has a higher bit rate. The fact that they've gone with 265 is a good sign. So the quality might be better. So we don't know. As soon as it becomes available, I will probably order one and see. But yes, kind of cool. And again, for selfies and handheld, maybe the handle is good, but I still like that ball design because you can do much more with it. For instance, I created a stereo bar that had two of them on it so that I could record footage at least in front of me at a full 180 by 180. What do you want to call it? FOV. And it worked okay. I mean, it wasn't full 360, but a lot of the stuff you're looking at is only in front of you. So there you go. If you're interested in something like that, it will be available for about $129. I'm sorry, $299. And other note that I think is going to be very interesting is it will also support YouTube Live as well as Facebook, which is something that the previous version does not do. And I don't know if that's just a software update. I'll find out and let you know next week. But if that's specific only to this model, that could in itself be a good reason to get it. It's one of the reasons why I bought the Insta360 is to be able to do YouTube and Facebook Live. And now that the Samsung does it, I think that, at least in my opinion, that the camera will probably be better for doing so. So I again will find that out. And like I said, it isn't cheap, $299. It's about $100 more, or about $70 more than what you'd spend for an Insta360. But unlike the Insta360, this only works with the Galaxy. And whoop, cross that out. It no longer just works with the Galaxy. It also works with other phones, including the iPhone. So I'll have to see again if the previous version has been updated to work on other platforms. I don't think that will be the case, because then why would you buy the new one? So hopefully they didn't do that, but more likely I have a feeling they did. So cool products from them. And again, the standard Gear VR doesn't look any different other than the controller, which you can buy separately. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. All right, so let's see. Oh, this is kind of interesting. Let's see if I brought it up. SketchUp has, and the reason I'm bringing up SketchUp is that I've been using SketchUp, which I'll talk a little bit later in my rummaging in the tech closet, about a project that I have been working on using the Occipital Structure Sensor, SketchUp, and the Unreal Engine in order to virtually remodel my home, and how it's actually saved me money now. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So with that, I was hoping to find out what other companies are doing utilizing VR in the design. And it appears that SketchUp themselves, which have both a free version, which has a lot of great tools in it, and a pro version, which I think, if I remember correctly, is about $800. They now have a viewer. They call it the SketchUp viewer, which they show here. And I was pretty excited about it. Here they show it being used with a HoloLens, but more than likely it will also be available for the mixed reality headsets that Microsoft will be putting out, or the OEMs will be putting out in the next month and by the end of the year, if I remember correctly. So I decided to take a look at what this would cost. And I had to swallow twice on this. SketchUp Viewer is $1,499.99, which to me seems a little pricey, especially for the fact that you also need, at this particular time, a Windows HoloLens, which, if you remember from the developer version, is $3,500, and there is no expectation in order to make that less expensive. Now, again, they show these models, these screenshots here, where they have this 3D model and all these people are looking at it. I have tried the HoloLens myself, and it does not look like this. It is literally a limited, what do you want to call it? Rectangle in front of your face that shows the model. Everything else is occluded, so it cuts off the sides. It does kind of ruin the immersion. You have to set back. The other things is, as you get too close to it, it also occludes the model and breaks the illusion of a 3D model. It's not like you can pass through it. So there are some issues with it. And at $3,500, I passed on it. The fact is that SketchUp is allowing you to look at their models using this. I really think that's an affront. Why? It's like saying, if you can afford the HoloLens, obviously you can afford $1,500. And personally, I don't think that that's right. I mean, that's not what SketchUp is known for, is high cost. The fact is that it's $14.99. So hopefully they'll have a lower cost version or eventually make it free. I think that's the direction they should go. I think it would be very cool. And later on, I will show you how to do this in other devices, including, especially if you use the Unreal Engine. I'm making a Unity version as well. You can do something like this in Unreal Engine and export it to HTC Vive, the Oculus. In fact, I just exported a Google Daydream version of it. Haven't tried it yet. Had it build it last night, and so we'll see how that worked out. But much more power in that. And again, let's drop this out of here, at $14.99, a little pricey for the kind of models that SketchUp provides. Again, they show it being used from a collaborative standpoint. That could be a cool factor, but again, that is also possible in Unity as well as the Unreal, which I'll be working on as well. And here are some of the things that can be done with it. I was also going to talk about a product from Dassault. I guess they're making a VR viewer as well to be used with SolidWorks. I was hoping Chris would come on and talk about that, so we'll leave that for next week. But there are a few companies now coming out with viewers. We've already talked about how Sketchfab has had WebVR as well as a browser for the Android devices as well as iPhones that allow you to view their models on their site. So I think this is coming on. What we don't have yet are a set of editing or annotating tools so multiple people can actually look at a model and discuss it and make annotations and changes. The SketchUp viewer has some of that capability, but again, at $14.99 and limited only to the HoloLens, I think is somewhat sad. So maybe we'll start to see this with other products as well, and hopefully a lower price. All right, don't want to beat that into the ground. Let's move on to another mixed reality subject. And again, this is what's creating some of the argument, and not necessarily or conflict, is MixCast VR is a product and they call it mixed reality, but when they say that, what they're talking about is mixing video with the cameras in your, let's say in this case, the HTC Vive or the Oculus within the Unity engine. And I have a little video show, so we'll go ahead and show that little video. So as you can see there, essentially the person standing in front of a green screen, and as you can see, it's not keyed very well, and there is obviously a green cast. So other things need to be done. Maybe that's just a earlier version. But the cool thing about the product I'm going to be talking about here shortly is they've made the process fairly easy and straightforward. I've tinkered with some of the previous versions of it, and it's not that easy to set up. There's a lot of requirements, and they've tried to simplify that, and we'll get into some of the pricing and the SDK tools that are available that if you're a developer, you can start using in Unity yourself. But the point to be made here is that why they call this mixed reality is they're mixing standard video with, let me jump back to their website, with the image or the video from the, in this case, the HTC Vive, so that you can see what the user is doing in the 3D world. And again, hence the term mixed reality. There is some other videos, and we'll talk about that later because I'll do a little how-to as well. You can go out to the Steam and buy either for 1 month, and again, this is subscription based, $10 or $19.95 for 3 months. Obviously, if you're going to be doing this for any time, the 3 month, hopefully they'll also provide an annual subscription. If you see that you'll be using this for some time, but you have to buy the MixCast VR Studio, which does the chroma key keying, and you can identify what color you want and what areas you want to be keyed. And again, they need to do some despilling and some other things to remove the greening capability, but maybe that'll be coming in newer versions. And then it has tracking tools, these little liners, these little arrows here to help position the trackers in the video with the trackers in hand. And they show a setup being used with a webcam, but obviously if you've got a DSLR or some other high quality video camera that is being input into an HDMI to USB or some other source, you can use that instead. That's the direction I will probably go in the video I'll do next week. But then you basically marry the two together, syncing it so that the camera is in the same tracking and position as well as the same FOV as your 3D space. And then you're able to show yourself demonstrating within your own environment. Again, their SDK is only available for Unity. It's one of their plugins. You just bring that into the Unity, and all the tools are available, as well as the, I believe it's C# SDK, so that you can immediately put those to use. And here is the little developer trailer that shows again some use of it. And then, like I said, next week I'll show the how-to. Fairly straightforward, and I will find out for myself how straightforward it is. But kind of a neat tool, very low cost, easy way to get yourself set up. There are other ways of doing it, but they're more hacks. This seems to be a little bit more polished. So if you're interested in doing, as they call it, the mixed reality of mixing video while you're within the VR environment, this would be a good direction. I can see something, maybe Chris and I could do this together so that we can have our VR characters or us in a VR studio that of our making. I don't know. We'll think of something, but I could see something like that happening. We'd have to probably create a lower profile headset, not like somebody's designing lower profile headset, so that most of our faces is still visible. But we could also look at the Google development in basically removing the headset and still putting your face there. Who knows? All of that's obviously coming and merging into providing our ability to be in our VR worlds and have other people see us in those VR worlds. And this is a great start. Okay, so that's about it for our news items. As mentioned, Chris won't be here for his Print Whisper. He did have some notes, and maybe I could bring that up and kind of give you a sneak preview of what he'll cover next week. So let me see if I can find that real quick for you. Let's see. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. He's basically going to talk about don't blame your printer. Sometimes it's the filament. I guess he may have had some issues. And with that being the case, he's going to talk about what can be done in order to isolate it to the material and his issues with some of the materials that he has had and his solution. So we'll look for that next week. Again, sadly, Chris had to bow out at the last minute today. But he will be with us next week. So I will go into the closet and rummage around and give you some updates. One of the updates is something that I have been working with. Here is the Dreamtreader, which we've talked about before, but I have added and testing, this is from a company called Jackson Safety, but added a ratcheting back into it instead of the elastic strap to provide something that you're seeing in other headsets. The reason for this is that this I can buy for less than $1 and just add it to the previous mounting headset so that you can essentially use a mounting system like that. A more refined version is with the Stealth unit, which is the iPhone 7 version, which I'm also been working on some new eye cups that provide a little more enclosure. So this is one type. I'm still thinking of going with the one on the Dreamtreader, which are a lower profile, but just extending the bottoms a little bit. And literally, you have as much blockage of light as you do with the Oculus headset. There's just a little bit at your nose, but even that is just very, very small amount. Let me bring that up. It makes it obviously lower profile. More importantly, even though these were made out of a what do you call it? I can't think of it, but hypoallergenic silicone material. There will be very little contact with the face, and literally it's like wearing a pair of glasses. I'll put this on with the new ratchet system. And you just tighten it onto your head, which one of the reasons I've looked at doing it this way is that since somebody approached me about using this in yoga, you don't want this coming off your head. This keeps it very firm and secure. You have, again, the two GoPro type tightening screws here. Once you tighten those down at your whatever your eye position is, then it just feels, in my opinion, very comfortable. A goggle system that then extends your vision. In this case, with the 42mm lenses that I have in place, about the same with the 5.5 screen on the Pixel XL as I think the Oculus as far as experience, except because these lenses are aspheric Pima plastic, it's sharper than the Fresnel lenses. And the same thing will apply to the iPhone 7 Stealth, and which is very close to being ready. I'm going to be working probably with my first run through, what is it? I can't think of Proto plant out of Minnesota, I think, if I remember the name, to create the silicone eye cups and then some other items. So that's coming along. But with the new ratchet thing, obviously the one I have on the Stealth is a little slimmer. This is a version through 3M that I can OEM again for less than $1. I will redesign, oops, that fell off. Redesign the cups on, or the bracket end on here, so it just clips on and then also can still be used with the elastic strap. So you have some options there. The battery will probably be a center strap over the top, but I found with the new ratchet system, which I'll put on, you don't really need an upper headband. It keeps it firmly in place, as you can see there. And then if you add the I or the screen cuffs like that. There you go. So essentially, I found with the new headband strap, it comes on easier and is more secure. So once I refine the headband, that 3M piece will snap right onto it. It will provide more reliability. And again, I'll probably go with the lower profile cups. Do a great job of blocking out light, but less material, keeping the whole thing lightweight. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the structure sensor with an iPad using a product called Canvas, an app and service that they provide. And what I used it for is, as you're probably aware of through some of the images, and I'll show a couple right now, I had been remodeling our home and trying to visualize it. So here is one of the images done on my Oculus through the Unreal Engine. One of the problems I had, and I'm going to go through a full workflow, is because these models are so complicated in the way that SketchUp exports models. I found that they call it a light map or light map UVs were too complex, and it really created some very ragged lighting. So I found some ways, there were some other guides out there that showed how to create an alternate UV1, which was supposedly automatic, but found out because the models are so complex, I had to bump up its resolution from the, I guess, default of 64 to 256, which then gave me much better maps. In this case, it's still probably, I think these are at 128. I probably need to bump them up to 256, but it gave me much better light maps, which made the whole process more effective. I have a couple of spotlights in there, as well as some point lights, and change the color temperature to more match the lighting that we have right now. This is the reason my structure sensor paid for itself. And what does it do? So let me jump to my screen. Where's that? Here, we'll bring it up. And running this through my Apple TV. So you should see my screen now. So let's bring up the Canvas app very quickly. Well, let me do, I don't want you. Okay. All right. So essentially the Canvas app is a free download. Obviously you'll need the structure sensor. Will not work with the iSense. Just keep that in mind. But as you can see, well, my head's in the way, but the Canvas icon looks like this. It can be downloaded for free from Occipital. I have some previous scans that I have done, but I will go ahead and do a test run. I will do part of my closet here. So essentially you hit the plus button. Make sure that your scanner is already hooked up and your brackets in place, and that has already been calibrated. But once you have it in place, I'll go ahead and just scan part of the closet. You essentially just move it around like I'm doing here. And like I said, less than a few minutes, a couple minutes at most, you scan the room. Essentially, you stand in the middle of the room and you scanned around you. And then when you're done, now, again, I didn't do the full scan. As you can see here, there is part of the room there. You then can make measurements because it's very similar to their previous room scanner, but then you can click there, scan to CAD feature, and this is I think their product, what do you want to call it? Their killer app that in my opinion, will make this a very productive product. Now, I know that other businesses, in fact, I had developed an app for a orthotics developer that allows them to use the structure sensor in iPad, or allow physicians and orthopedists to use it. There are other alternatives that people can use in the medical, and we've talked about several of those things. But for the most part, something that immediately can benefit you, I think the Canvas app is that. So what you can do is, once you make the full scan, you then scan and then send it up to their service called Canvas Service. And one of the people that I talked to, Alex, he has a crew, and they literally take that, clean it up, and then provide 3 different formats, if I remember correctly. They provide I think a DWG, a SketchUp, and then one other, if I remember correctly. And with the SketchUp, which I think was the one that was most beneficial to me, with the free version of SketchUp, you can take that and then obviously make modifications, but for the most part, it does a great job on its own of creating the room. Now, I actually had floor plans. We have an architect, so I have accurate floor plans, and I was able to take this CAD file and pretty much plop it directly onto the more accurate floor plan, and it was within, gosh, less than an inch difference, which for a single room is not an issue. With more rooms, that could be an issue. And as I've talked about on the show before, that is something that they could also work. If you did multiple rooms, they will have a multiple scan discount. But essentially, or an added service that if you can, like $10 or something. But the point I'm wanting to make is that for $29 in, let me say, less than 48, what's their estimated turnaround? Yeah, 2 business days. So if you, let's say, did this on a Monday, Wednesday, you would have your CAD file back, and then you'd immediately be able to put it to use. Now, what I did with it is, once I got it back, I did a little cleaning in SketchUp, and then next week I'll show you the workflow from going from SketchUp, some of the things that you have to do within SketchUp to make it easier to import into Unreal or Unity, and then using, at least with Unreal, Blender to convert it from a collada file, because the free version does not do FBX export, and then from there bring it into Unreal. And it's fairly straightforward. So here is the main reason that I use this tool. We had put in a gas furnace, and that gas furnace, or not gas, fireplace, is a dual fireplace. So we have this large column, as you can see in this dual uh, input, that essentially is available on both sides through the dining room as well as the living room. But the column itself is a fixed structure. In fact, it's a support structure, so it's not like they could modify that. The problem is that this gas fireplace is thinner than the column here. So when this was originally bought, because I guess we put a hefty down payment on it, we had to pretty much, it was already bought for. We had some people come out, but they really did not know at the time what the dimensions were. Now, the nice thing about SketchUp is that a lot of the models have already been created. In this case, this fireplace had already been created, and it was engineering accurate. The dimensions were very close, if not exact, as the ones that were in their guide that shows you their dimensions. So I was able to place it in the column that was scanned using the Occipital Structure Sensor as well as their Canvas app. And when the results were back, I was able to place it in here, and then in VR actually see how much it was offset. And one of the things that I was hoping for, and as you can see in this illustration here, actually it's front on, they couldn't do what I was hoping they would do, which was make it flush on one side, which I'm still debating. But the whole point is, this was not something that was taken into consideration at the time of sale, or even when the contractors originally came out. This was not posed until I had actually brought it in and was able to actually investigate for myself how this would fit in there. And then at that point, when I was able to mention to him a few weeks ago. So I was hoping to have some illustrations. I'll bring them in next week before they actually finish it up. And then when they finish it up, where it sits right now. But again, it's about 3 inches inside on both sides. And so very, very happy with the abilities of the structure sensor. I don't remember what the exact, I think it's about $375 now. The Canvas app is free. So with the two of these together, what one can do as far as your own home remodels, and the fact is using SketchUp and using the Unreal Engine or the Unity, and I'll have workflows for both of those, what do you want to call it, real-time visualization engines or gaming engines next week. But essentially be able to throw on your headset and scoot around using the projector and either both Unity or an Unreal, where you just kind of teleport around. You're able to inspect as though you're there. And it's kind of a creepy feeling because that space is something you're already familiar with if you already live in your home. And then being able to approach it from a VR perspective, which was kind of creepily realistic, I was able to move around it. And as you saw in my video last week, if you watch my episode, I was able to use my hands to move around. So the next step I'm going to do is create a palette so that I can change colors and also have a dual version of that. So as you're making changes, somebody else can see it as well. And one of the important things here is that I've been able to test accurate color swatches at different lighting and color temperatures to see how that light would be perceived while you're in the VR world. And for those of you who think, okay, well, that just seems to be an extra step, I have found doing 3D visualization on a screen versus 3D visualization in VR. VR is just so much more of a powerful tool. And really, it's not that difficult. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And I will show more about that next week. So with that being said, that's about it. I'd like to thank 3Ders.org, as well as some of the other people that we've talked about as far as Microsoft. Who else? Samsung, and a few others, Ono, Matter Inform, Eora 3D, and obviously the Gorillaz, Saturnz, Barz video, and then obviously Sixense finally coming out with Make VR. Sadly, their actual handsets are still AWOL and still unknown when that will be available. But other than that, on that note, I'd like to say goodbye. I think I've covered everything. Yeah, it appears that way. And hopefully, actually, Chris will be back next week, if all things permitting, and he'll discuss a little bit more. I'm hoping about the Black & Decker, and then he had a printer that he wanted to talk about, which was the Hang printer, a Delta printer that's done in reverse. Hence the name Hang printer. And so he'll talk about that, and then obviously whatever else the Print Whisperer has for us. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you again next Friday on another episode of 3D in Review, and for the week of April. So have a great April Fools next week. Hopefully somebody doesn't fool me too dramatically tomorrow, but happy April Fool's Day. See ya. Bye.